Right now, those street vendor riots in Johannesburg on Thursday have once again thrown the spotlight on the plight of undocumented migrants and indeed migrant rights in the country right now. Mr. Ncube, the head of strategic litigation at Lawyers for Human Rights, is going to chat with us. He's on the line from Johannesburg. Good afternoon, Wayne, and thank you so much for making time for us on the SABC News Desk.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Wayne, I just want to garner your initial reaction on the street riots where we saw running clashes between police and vendors.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is obviously the fact that no one actually got killed and there was a tactical retreat and there was no use of force is something that is encouraging. I think ultimately lives are the most important things in a situation like this.
What is the status of migrants in South Africa today, looking at it within a human rights context, of course?
Yes, okay. So in this particular situation, I think we have a lot of traders in Johannesburg CBD. It's a complete population of migrants and locals, people who might not necessarily be from Johannesburg but come from different provinces, and not all of them are actually foreign nationals. But then there has been a long struggle within that population that trade within the CBD to kind of comply with municipal bylaws, and a lot of organizations, including Lawyers for Human Rights and organizations like FAIRY, have assisted a lot of those communities with various issues, whether it's the housing situation, or it's the Johannesburg CBD, or it's Home Affairs raids that kind of target that particular area. The one commonality around that population group is that people are not as well off and do not have as many options as in other places. But it's not necessarily accurate to call that whole area a migrant community.
What would you say are some of the major problems or challenges facing refugees and migrants in South Africa from a legal perspective right now?
So I think the biggest problem is the access to documentation and services from the Department of Home Affairs, particularly in the asylum and refugee system. The refugee system has a lot of different issues, whether it's accessibility to open refugee reception centers. There have been attempts to close the centers in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, or the ones that are open, whether it's corruption and the queues that kind of exist there, and then also the quality of the services, whether or not corruption is involved. So a lot of people get turned away at refugee reception centers, whether it's because of corruption or it's because they're told that they have to go apply somewhere else, or because of the queues. The system is under strain, and a lot of people simply are not able to get documentation, even though they attend regularly and they do everything legally in the law in terms of what they're meant to do. So it is a bit of a complicated situation, and this really is for asylum seekers and refugees. On the migrant side, I think people have similar issues in terms of trying to ensure that they do get documented and that they are able to comply with the laws. I think the services that people who are not from South Africa encounter differ specifically when they go to a Department of Home Affairs office as opposed to locals.
When it comes to migrants who are not genuine refugees but are simply seeking economic opportunities, trying to regularize their stay in South Africa, how has this when impacted on the refugee status determination process right now?
So, because of the lack of options in the immigration system, you will obviously find some people who try and then use the asylum system to regularize themselves. However, if this asylum system was operating properly, it should be able to deal with that. If you were still having proper decision-making taking place and all the reception offices were open, the Act and the procedures in law already take that into account. But really, the problem is that there's almost been an abandonment of service provision in the asylum system. So I wouldn't want to cascade all the problems in the asylum system to come necessarily from the lack of avenues in the immigration system, because it's a much more complicated issue than that.
Ncube, Head of Litigation at Lawyers for Human Rights, thank you so much for your time on the SABC News Desk.